right, everyone. Welcome back to the Command Your Brand Show. I am your host, Josh Silvestro, brand ambassador of Command Your Brand. We help CEOs and founders to get their message out on top-rated podcasts. Grab our new book, ranked the #1 PR book on Amazon, bestpodcastbook.com. And before you guys forget, and before I forget, please remember to, if you guys like this stuff, please like and subscribe to this, and definitely check us out even more on our channel. So today I have a very special guest speaker who I'd love to talk to. Actually, I had a privilege to talk to him a little bit earlier on, and he actually has a book that just got released that he wrote over the summer, and he's just really excited to talk about this book. And I actually wanted to dive into his book a bit more and just kind of talk to him about what this book is about. So I'd like to introduce you guys to Allan. So Allan, thanks for joining the show, man.
Oh, thanks so much, Josh. Really happy to be here.
Yeah. So I guess we'll first start off with, for people who don't know who you are, just give a little bit of brief of who you are, and just a little bit about your background and why you wrote the book that you wrote today.
Okay. Well, right now I'm a first-time author. This book is something I wasn't planning on doing. I run a small business full-time. I can barely keep up with that. And, the concept for this book came to me over the summer. And it kind of blew me away when I realized what was going on. And so I pretty much dropped everything, worked all summer long from mid-May through the beginning of September, every weekend, all weekend, a lot of nights, and worked on it like I just couldn't stop. It's all I could think about.
Yeah. And what drove you? Because I know there's probably an underlying thing of why you wrote the book. So I guess what drove you to write this book?
All right, so what happened to me, and I always take a deep breath when people ask this question because I know it's hard to believe. But I woke up one Saturday morning in late April 2024, around 4:00 in the morning, and I was laying in bed. I mean, I was awake. I wasn't dreaming. And as I was laying there, kind of getting ready to, get up, run to the bathroom, whatever. I had an experience unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life before or since. But what happened was, as I was laying there, I was all of a sudden simultaneously aware of 6, I call them pillars of society, that are under attack, that are being intentionally collapsed to bring down this country, in an attempt to bring down this country and the Western world. And I was startled. I mean, it was intense, and it was all at once. So what I like to say is, okay, if you're in a restaurant with your wife, it seems like they can hear the conversations around them and kind of be tapped into that, and where the guys we're just in the conversation with the wife or whatever, girlfriend, whatever your situation might be. But anyway, I think guys can relate to this, that women kind of can hear more things. Well, this was, for me as a guy, I could perceive all 6 at one time in total clarity, as if I were paying total attention to each one without being distracted by the other. I understood all 6. And it was such an intense experience that I was like, whoa. So I got up, went into the bathroom, pulled out a piece of paper, and wrote down those 6 collapse points. And the other thing that was happening was, I just understood that they were in different stages of collapse. Like, it wasn't like they were all coming down together at the same time, but there were efforts being made for all 6. So I wrote them down because I didn't want to forget. I figure I'm going back to sleep. It's 4:00. I'll go back to bed. I couldn't sleep. I'm just laying there thinking about those 6, and 3 more came. So now we're up to 9. I get up, write them down. And I'm like, what's going on? I go back to bed, and then within a minute or two, 2 more. So I got up, I wrote those down, and at this point, I'm just like blown away. So, I mean, just like in full transparency, I do pray to God. It's a routine every day I have. I get up in the morning, first thing I pray. I try to get a sense of direction for the day and everything. But I've never had any experience like this. I mean, as close as it would come, you think of a friend who needs some help or whatever when you're in your prayer time, and then you try to do something about it. That would be it, So this was intense, but I felt like it was from God, because it was completely outside of my normal awareness, And so in my head, I just said, God, what's going on? why are you showing me this? And I said, do you want me to write a book or something? And if you did want me to write a book, what would the title be? Before I could get to the word title be in my mind, I knew the full title and the subtitle. It was just instantly there. I mean, like immediately, completely there. It's not like I heard words one after the other. I just instantly knew the whole title and the subtitle. The globalist plan to collapse everything to usher in a new world order was just boom right in front of me. And not visually, but just a knowledge. So I, I thought, okay, I guess you want me to write a book, but how am I going to do this? It was intimidating. Like, I've never written a book. This sounds like a ton of research. And the sense that came to me immediately is I thought that was just right from the heart and it'll flow. And so dove into the research and with the goal of complete transparency. And the book's written in a conversational style where I'm kind of giving my thoughts and observations along with the research.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of curious because, a lot of people on our podcast, are CEOs and founders for the most part. And I'm always kind of curious in terms of their lifestyle. Like, you obviously own a company, you help run a company, but like you somehow found the time to actually write a book. Like, I know a lot of people struggle with, they want to write a book, but they don't really have the time because they're really being a leader in their field or their business. How did you even find the time to do it even?
Yeah. Well, first I got to say my regular job did suffer. I got behind on things, and I was trying desperately not to let that happen. I was trying to do it in my free time. I mean, we all have more free time than we think. I mean, what do you do after work? That's technically free time. What do you do on the weekends? That's free time. So I devoted practically every hour of my free time to it. So, what I would do. So you got to understand, I had the 11 collapse points as the core. So I was working backward from that, researching the collapse points and then writing about what I found. So there was no writer's block because I knew exactly what I had to do, so I had that advantage. But, what I would do is on a Thursday night or whatever, I would think about, my goal was to write a chapter a week. So, got the 11 collapse points, lots of chapters after an intro to it, leading up to, what is globalism, those kind of things. But come hell or high water, I was determined. That was my pace, a chapter a week, and I was able to keep up with that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, when I told my wife about this, when she came down in the morning, as I'm sitting there at the table with a cup of coffee, she came down pretty early, maybe 5:30.
Yeah.
I told her what happened. She said, "Well, what do you want to do? You got to go somewhere to launch this thing to start writing. You can't just like fit this into your regular schedule 100%." So I booked 8 nights at the beach, and I spent every day at the beach researching like crazy. So I had a real intense kickoff right at the beginning in mid-May. But then after that, it was every weekend from Saturday morning early till like 11 p.m. Sunday night. And I would get out of the house. I would go to like a Barnes and Noble. I would break it up. I'd do some work here. I'd leave, go to Barnes and Noble and, write. And, so it was hard to do because it was a huge time demand. So I tried to just break it up by going different places to make it not feel so tedious, but that's how I did it. It just, the regular work did suffer, but my wife was totally on board. She gave up her summer for this too. You know what I mean? So if she hadn't been on board, this probably would have taken 4 times as long, because you don't want to be a jerk. Just say, "Hey, go live your life. I'm going to go write a book." But she was in for it. So
yeah, interesting. And then I guess in terms of your book, right? Because you could define what a globalist really is, because I know you probably research a lot about it, and I think some people know what it is. Sometimes I always find people think they know what something is, but they really don't. I guess could you? Because I know you're the expert in this area. Like, what do you define a globalist is?
Yeah, so that word can mean many things. It's not just one thing. There are benign aspects of globalism. Like, we're all for, students coming to this country and exchange students, things like that. You could call that globalism, where you're opening up your education system to people around the world. You could talk about global trade. We trade with different countries. Yeah, that's not the aspect of globalism that this book is about. the aspect of globalism that the book is about the true globalist philosophy of the people who want a world with global, um, one global system of government, one global system of control, no national borders. There are not countries. It's one world, right? And that's why they call it, the New World Order or the One World Order. There are actually people who want that, who want central power, central control over everything. And maybe there's nations in name only, but the real control, the real decision making comes from the top for everybody.
Yeah.
So, and so a lot of what the UN is really all about is about that. It's about one way to do everything. It's like one protocol to deal with any kind of international medical emergency like COVID. If something like COVID were to happen again, the globalist goal would be the UN dictates everybody's protocol everywhere and nobody gets to opt out of it. That would be what real globalism is about. And it's about control from top down. And in order to do that, they have to collapse national governments. The whole governmental system has to come down and be basically replaced on the ashes of that collapsed society. You build the new world order where you can actually gain that kind of control.
Interesting. And so I know you mentioned earlier was the 11 points of the 11 points of the thing that you were talking about, the pillars of society. Could you maybe talk about? I'm just kind of curious. What are these 11 points, and what makes them pillars in our sense, in your sense? I guess rather.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, and the funny thing was, speaking of that, like if you would have asked me that question before this happened to me in April.
Yeah.
If you would have said, okay, what are the collapse points that, where the country's vulnerable things, I might have been able to think of 2 or 3. But, like I said, I got 11 that morning. So, so I'm just going to read them. I have them here. I don't have them memorized. But so from most obvious to perhaps least obvious, the first one is national borders. You saw what's happened if you're up on the news, you would know, your audience, whatever, would, depending on their level of interest in the news and where they get their news. Yeah. Hopefully they're very aware of, the crisis at the southern border with millions, some say up to 20 million people have gotten into the country in the prior 4 years without being vetted. Right. So they just come on in, whatever you are, come on in, So that's one, is to collapse national borders. And that's one of the ways you do it, is to have such an influx of people from every other country that it just overwhelms your border, and eventually your border means nothing. And this is also happening in Europe. So that's one. The second one is security and police protection, which goes right along with it. So you probably remember during the riots, the 2020 riots, the whole summer, where buildings were burning across the country and in the big cities. Yeah. And then then they said, well, we need to defund the police. Like, wow, what a great time to defund the police as our borders are being rushed and as the cities are burning. So they kind of go together. So, you collapse the borders, you weaken society, less protection, police protection, less sense of security. And then the next one is privacy. So we all know that, we have email systems where the email is being read. And if, you want to prove that, just do a search on your email. It'll find content inside the email messages. So our email is being read. Our phones track us wherever we go. And in the book, you'll find proof that they track you, even if they're turned off. And even if you have the settings set not to track, even if you have your privacy ramped up, they still track you. The fourth one is banking and finance. So to collapse the banking system, to collapse the money supply, to make it so that people can't afford to live, basically.
Right.
Fifth one is the education system, the quality of the education. I mean, there's been lots of revelations in the news, since COVID and kids doing school from home. a lot of revelations about shocking things coming across there, but it goes way back, and the book details that.
Yeah.
Yep. The next one is the energy supply.
Hmm.
So the whole the so-called Green New Deal and trying to get us to wind power and solar power. Not that any of those things are bad, but they're inadequate. They're totally inadequate. And in the book, you'll see a few years ago during the big freeze in Texas, Texas was actually not permitted to turn on their coal-fired plants.
Wow.
Or they would have been fined by the federal government, and possibly the governor could have actually been imprisoned.
Wow.
If he would have done it. They had lots of windmills. The windmills weren't working. They have coal plants too, but only a certain number that they're allowed to use. But yeah, so it's to get you off of reliable energy, to collapse the energy. The next one's the environment. And yeah, that one was really interesting to me. And it's not what you would think. It's the environment in ways that the full environment, the quality of the food we eat, how the chemicals that are in the food, the chemicals that are sprayed on plants to supposedly stop insects, from harming them, the glyphosate, the things like that. It's also the air quality.
Right.
The studies that have been done on the nanoparticles that are being sprayed in the air in what we call chemtrails, which a lot of people deny the reality, but the book takes you to the proof of actually studies have been done, what's in these nanoparticulates of aluminum, barium, strontium, things that are really harmful, not just for humans, but for animals and for plants. The next one is the medical system. Our medical system is totally pharma driven. I mean, if you turn on TV at night, if you're a news junkie at all or whatever, there's probably everywhere. But I listen to a lot of news, and if it wasn't for the pharma commercials, you wonder how many ads they would even be running.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they basically control so much, but the whole medical system has been pharma driven for quite a long time, since John Rockefeller started basically that system. Now there's only, because he was an oil tycoon, and almost all the pharma drugs are petroleum based, which is shocking to me. Yeah. Yeah. So then the food supply itself, the book goes into, in just 1 year alone, all the plants that have burned down, the chickens, and turkeys and cattle that have been slaughtered intentionally because, some PCR test says they have some flu. And so you got to slaughter the whole thing. And that's why the egg prices are so high, by the way. It's because there's a lack of supply. I mean, millions and millions of animals killed. Now the last two are the least obvious, but self-identity. So as a child, who am I? What gender am I? Just self-identity in general. Like, what person am I? Is that really fluid, or isn't it fluid? The confusion. This was not a thing, when we grew up. Now all of a sudden it's a thing. Why? You're right.
Right.
So yeah, that's a top-down effort to introduce that. And then the final one, I think, is the least obvious of all, and that is faith itself. Because if you can weaken the faith of a person or the faith of society in general, their willingness to resist tyranny will be much less than if they believe, like, no, this is wrong. These are God-given rights, for these God-given freedoms, what our Constitution was built upon. The framers said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that we're endowed by our Creator, with life, liberty, freedom, that these are core things that go beyond government. Government has no right to try to take these away. So that's why, it's so important. It's probably the most important, because without that, you don't have a strong enough resistance. So
yeah, that's so interesting. But yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of that's fascinating to me. So just, I don't know if you know this, Alan, but like I'm from New York, and I grew up in the '90s. Like I was a '95 baby, and until now, I noticed, especially as a child, we didn't have social media. It was kind of just still kind of becoming a thing,
Hmm.
and just even the phones itself wasn't even a thing really. Like it was sort of like little plastic things, if you remember. And like I remember my father just got his first BlackBerry. You know what I mean? Like that
Right.
time period. And I live in New York City, and I just noticed even like what the things that you're mentioning, like, oh yeah, like I see this and I observe this happening. It's just, you see the culture around you just changing, and sometimes not really for the better. It's sort of kind of, sometimes it's a very slow decline, but at least in the past 10 years, I've noticed it's definitely, the decline has increased probably tenfold just from I grew up in like in my family, for example, we're Italian, so like everyone starts drinking and like they do whatever they want to do. And even in New York, it's like they legalize marijuana. It's just like it's like a marijuana pool of just everything. Like
Yeah.
everywhere you go, it's like marijuana. It's just drugs. It's just, you see needles on the floor. So I have some reality with just what you're talking about, like with the food. Like eggs here are like $9-10 in New York City. Just for a carton of eggs. So I totally feel. I literally, like, when you read those, I kind of felt the impact and what it does for people. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. And like I said, when that came to me that one morning, I was blown away, and the sense I had was, wow, I never thought of that. It's like
Yeah.
it does all seem kind of on the surface obviously true once you hear it,
Yeah.
but I just never thought about, wow, these all kind of tie together.
Yeah. So I guess with these collapses or these things that are going on around the world, is there like a flip coin to it? Is there a way to actually resolve it, do you think? Or is it something that we're just inevitable, supposed to be, just that's just the way it is? And is there a way to actually resolve those things that are happening today?
Yeah, I think there is.
Yeah.
I think there's a heavy price to be paid for it, though, in some
Yeah.
sense. So the antidote to globalism is nationalism.
Right.
And nationalism is a word that, they try to make it sound like, oh, you're a white nationalist or whatever. They try to demonize the word nationalism. All nationalism is basically what this country was founded on. It's your country's there to protect you. Your country is your brothers and sisters. It's your team, if you want to call it that. And your concern has to be for you know your brothers and sisters in this thing we call a country,
Right.
and it's protecting it, defending it, having people in power who will do that.
Hmm.
And have you ever wondered why the media, I mean, going back to Trump's first term, why they demonize him so much and so unrelentingly, unlike anything we've ever seen? It's
Hmm.
not his personality, which I know can be abrasive, but it has nothing to do with that. It's his policies, which are nationalist policies. Make America strong, close the borders, put tariffs on if you need to level the playing field to countries that are charging us tariffs that are even worse than what he's trying to put on them right now.
Yeah.
And it just goes on and on, make America healthy again, that whole Maha movement with
Yeah.
RFK Jr. That is like a body blow to the globalist agenda. Totally against. So once your eyes are opened, and these 11 collapse points kind of give you a framework to understand the big picture, but once your eyes are opened to the big picture, you can understand that at least what Trump's trying to do is designed to overpower globalism. And this movement, this nationalist type movement, is happening within Europe too. The problem is they've already got the European Union, which is kind of like a globalist framework for all of Europe, where what they say in Brussels, what they say comes from the top, can override the results of elections, can override who even gets into power. They can
Right.
say, no, no, I know you voted that guy in, but he's out. So, um, yeah, the antidote is nationalism, and if there's enough of that going on, um, we can prevent it from happening. But people's eyes have to be open. That's the key.
Yeah. And I guess for you, because obviously with this book, this kind of addresses what the actual problem is. Like, do you like with people who are globalists, or maybe they don't call themselves that, but they kind of have the globalist ideologies? What do you find, because obviously they're going to look at this book and be like, oh, that's not true, or this is not like, how do you think we can open their eyes and just really just look at this as like, this is the solution to these problems? How can we handle their skepticism of the subject?
Yeah, it always comes down to proof, and the trick is a lot of times people aren't even willing to look at another point of view. They're just, their minds are shut. But for people who are willing to, the book is unique in the way that it's formatted. It has about 170 QR codes in it, 100 QR codes that link directly to videos to show you the proof of what I'm talking about all along the way. And seeing and hearing is believing in a lot of cases. So, the book again takes the approach of looking at the most obvious ones first, so that you get in the framework of, okay, I kind of see what's going on here. And it also connects you to articles that go in, that do deep dives, and some of the videos are even, like hour and a half long documentaries if you want to go into them. Most of them are short videos, a minute or two, 30 seconds. But there's nothing like hearing it in your own words.
Yeah.
In their own words, I should say. So I think what it has to be is it has to be a grassroots thing. It has to come from the bottom up. Just like, people don't get their news from the controlled media so much anymore, NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN. They don't have nearly the power now that we have X, social media, Rumble, and all these other places you can go that they can't control. And it's because they can't control it that the word's getting out and people's eyes are being opened. And enough people understood this, maybe without understanding the name of it, they understood what was at stake, and that we had to have people. I mean, something weird's going on when Joe Rogan starts to think that, man, maybe Trump has a point here. When Tucker Carlson says, yeah, yeah, he's got a point. So it was a movement where once your eyes are open to the truth, you want more truth, because the truth is interesting, it's compelling, and it's been hidden for so long that people are starving for more information.
Yeah.
And so, just the answer is getting it out to the masses, and it'll take care of itself.
That's
I forget
interesting.
who it was. It was one of the saints who said that you don't need to defend truth. Truth will defend itself. It's like a lion. You just need to release it, and I think that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, what made you choose the QR codes? Like, why is that like the stable source of where your book is? Like, why use QR codes specifically?
Yeah. Well, one of the things is I wanted the book to appeal to younger people who were comfortable with that format. They're on their phones, they're watching videos, constantly throughout the day in different formats. So I felt it was a format that makes it less tedious. The book's roughly 300 pages. I don't know about you, but when I see that much text, that's intimidating. And it's like, am I really up for this? But if I know that, hey, it's going to be paced along the way with interesting videos and things like that, and also a lot of illustrations. There's about 100 illustrations in there as well to pace it and make it easy, make it interesting. But yeah, that's why I don't want it to be just you're taking my word for it. I want you to see it for yourself. And it used to be that the way people did this was footnotes. And I don't know about you. When I see a footnote, it's like, okay, yeah, he's got a source, but no way am I going to go check out that. I mean, it has to be major before I'll take that effort. But if you can just hold your phone over that QR code, jump there and watch a video for a minute or two, it's like, all right, so it keeps it moving, it keeps it interesting. And I think it provides a level of proof that people aren't used to. So that's why.
Awesome. And I'm just curious from your book, right? I'm not sure how long you've published it for, but like, what was the feedback you got from the book? Like any stories that like you've gotten from people who bought the book and read the book, and anything like that has happened?
Yeah. So, there's like right now there's 10 reviews on Amazon. So
Yeah, yeah.
But one of those reviews was really interesting. It was a lady who said, she said that I'm trying to remember, but it was something like the QR codes made the unbelievable believable. And she said, I never understood how the world worked, but now that I do, I realize that I have a lot of decisions to make.
Wow.
So, yeah. And I've had people that I know that have given me feedback on it who say that they love the format, and that one guy who's pretty much up on this kind of thing in general, he said, I thought I knew everything about this, but I learned a lot that I didn't expect to learn. And so, yeah, I think most people are kind of blown away by it. You know what I mean? Depending on how close they are already to the topic.
Yeah.
But the less familiar they are with it, the more surprised they tend to be. But so far, it's been 10 for 10 5-star reviews. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate the time kind of giving me, and just kind of, I was always curious about actually what your book was all about, but now I kind of got the little taste of it, and maybe I have to go out and get the book. It'll be really, really good.
I'll send you one. You don't have to buy it, but
oh, perfect. Perfect. So I guess my last question before we end here, I would love to, I want people to find out more about you and just kind of get to know you personally and your book. Is there a place that people can reach out to you, or just kind of, I know you also had something that you wanted to give away maybe, or anything like that for people who are listening to this?
Yeah. The place to go to learn about the book is globalcollapsebook.com. globalcollapsebook.com. And for your listeners, if they go to put /read at the end of that, globalcollapsebook.com /read, they can read the first collapse chapter for free. And
Wow.
That'll give them a sense of, what the book's like. And if they want to go from there, they can order it from there.
Awesome. Well, Allan, I really appreciate the time you kind of given me. I love talking about your book, and when I get it, I'll definitely have to talk to you about it, and I definitely want to chat with you about it at some point. But for guys who are listening to this, if you guys like this stuff, definitely order his book. I think it's a very interesting subject, and if you guys like this stuff, please like and subscribe, and I'll definitely see you next time. And Allan, thank you for joining the show, man.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Josh. Great to be with you.